We beat Farmer this year!
How's that? Well, we granted them legal indemnity in every area of life. We allowed them to jack prices for vital medicines, and we're about to grant them legal indemnity for more medicines, and we're refusing to prosecute them for evident, palpable crimes. Whoa! What a victory! Hello there, you 6 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage towards truth and freedom, which of course is already within us. If only we just admit it to ourselves. Turn on that notification bell, subscribe right now, and most importantly of all, remember, remind yourself that every day we are on Rumble, not Bumble, don't be a perv. At these times, wherever you are, where we go deep, where we're uncensored, where we can say what we want and want what we say. We go deep into the stories that matter to you. We provide truth as best as we can, as we understand it, in the Holy Lord's name. Now let's see what's in the papers. You're aware, of course, that Joe Biden thinks he beat Big Pharma this year.
We beat Farmer this year!
No, we beat Big Pharma this year. Now, what I would imagine that would be is that Big Pharma are now defeated. They no longer have a stranglehold over American politics. Congress is no longer awash with filthy Big Pharma dollars. Drugs are meaningfully price capped. The FDA is regulated independently. Companies aren't granted legal indemnity for their medicines. Insulin is not 680% more expensive than it could be. That asbestos isn't in baby powder, allegedly. And yet, it appears the world we're in is very different from Joe Biden's fist-pumping world of wonder. He's sort of WWF, we beat Big Pharma.
Oh, that's a lot to take in quickly, isn't it? It's all about one subject too, which is the crazy thing. Oh.
This year, I'm the Ultimate Warrior. Baby, you need the Undertaker. Let's analyse together the various areas in which Big Pharma appear to be victorious. Should we start with insulin, a necessary medicine for those of us that have diabetes? New research estimates that around 1.3 million US adults, that's 16.5% of all adult insulin users with diabetes, either skipped entire insulin doses, took less than needed, or put off purchases of the medicine over the past year due to its high cost. That means it's too expensive.
We beat Farmer this year!
Excuse me, I feel weak.
We beat Farmer this year!
Please, could you help me regulate my sugar?
Come on, man!
The list costs of the cheap-to-produce medicine, it's cheap to produce, are often up to 10 times higher than in other countries. Now, of course, we know that capitalism is a scale, a spectrum. You know, just running a business and making a profit to feed your family and live a nice life, that's all cool and dandy, although ultimately perhaps you can make spiritual arguments about whether or not it will make you happy, but they're arguments that I'm hardly qualified to make in this hat. But the idea that a vital medicine would be 10 times more than in other countries does make a mockery of the phrase, we beat Big Pharma this year, and indeed the entire notion of American greatness. America, this country that's changed the world, that's given so much, how can it fail its people in such an obvious way? One manufacturer, Eli Lilly, I don't like saying that, has hiked the list price of the commonly used insulin product, Humalog, don't like saying that, by an inflation-adjusted 680% since it started selling the life-saving drug in 1996. 680%. 680%. Like that, how do they, what the board means, like, we're gonna increase prices of this life-saving drug. Oh, it saves lives, that's right. By 100%. Hey, could we do more? Well, all right, 200%. Doesn't seem like enough, does it? 300%? Listen, we're gonna keep going till it's 690%. Could we do 680? Yeah, all right. Eli Lilly have spent over $100 million in
Fuck me, what happened in 2007? Oh.
lobbying over the last 25 years. And from that $100 million, which seems like a lot of money to spend on lobbying for no return, they have indeed gotten a return because no one's going to stop them doing that.
We beat Farmer this year.
Oh, that's so cool because now you'll do something about Eli Lilly and that's 680%, where like 10% of people, 16% of adults that need insulin can't get it or are not buying it. Oh, no, sorry. What I meant to say is we beat Big Pharma this year in ways that do not affect Big Pharma in any way that they would mind because of their lobbying money, because of the shares Congress people own, and because of deep systemic injustice that I'm unwilling and unable to address. I couldn't fit all of that into a slogan. And frankly, if Joe Biden shook his fist for that long, it would probably fall off.
Come on,
Whatever you
man.
type goes
I'd
up.
say Big Pharma 1,
Well, I haven't
Joe
said that.
Biden
You just
0.
in the chat.
Time now for the
It's
next
on
bout
YouTube,
for
so
fighting Joe Biden.
Twitch.
Indemnity through child vaccines. I hope that this doesn't mean
Start with
that they're going to
Russell.
continue to grant legal indemnity to vaccine manufacturers while they're pushing vaccines on children. But we all know, of course, that when the vaccines were first introduced, one of the things that many
By
of
the
us
way,
felt a little uncertain
cameras
about
on.
was the legal indemnity granted to all companies. Because, of course, obviously, if someone goes, listen, I'll make your medicines, buddy boy, but I don't want you down the line suing me should those medicines have
Joe's logged in.
any what? Any nothing.
Yeah, no.
So just give us legal indemnity
It's on YouTube,
and
isn't
don't
it?
even think about why I would want that.
If you want to
Oh,
talk to me, you got to talk to me on
Okay
YouTube.
then.
We beat Farmer this year.
An expert committee
Oh,
on
one
Wednesday
viewer.
recommended
Hey.
that
Hey,
COVID-19
Joe.
shots become part of the CDC vaccine
man.
program for children. Expert committee. I wonder who those people are. This, while 75.2% of children under the age of 11 already have natural immunity. So, I'm not saying that natural immunity is more effective than the vaccines, but why don't you find out for yourself whether natural immunity is more effective than vaccines? And don't break up how I said that. This, while 75.2% of children, I'm not saying children under the age of 11 already have natural immunity. So, I'm not saying that natural immunity is more effective than the vaccines, but why don't you find out for yourself whether natural immunity is more effective than vaccines? And don't break up how I said that. This, while 75.2% of children under the age of 11 already have natural immunity, according to a CDC study that concluded in February. CDC data from New York and California demonstrate that natural immunity was 2.8 times more effective in preventing hospitalization and 3.3 to 4.7 times more effective in preventing COVID infection compared to vaccination during the Delta wave. Fair
good.
enough then. A CDC committee will likely deliver permanent legal indemnity to Pfizer and Moderna through the process of adding the drug company's mRNA injections to the child and adolescent immunization schedules. The Health Resources and Service Administration has clarified what needs to happen for a vaccine to become liability-free. For a vaccine to be covered, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, must recommend the category of vaccine for routine administration to children or pregnant women. What that paragraph means is that by recommending a vaccine to children, you trigger its indemnity clause, meaning now that it is de facto free from the potential of legal cases going forward. I'm not suggesting that legal cases against big pharma companies has been a historic. By recommending a vaccine to children, you trigger its indemnity clause, meaning now that it is de facto free from the potential of legal cases going forward. I'm not suggesting that legal cases against big pharma companies has been a historic or recent problem, but I will continue to read you an article that suggests it might have been. You have to ask yourself a question. Is the recommendation of vaccines for children a measure to advantage and help children everywhere, or to help Pfizer, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson everywhere? Just for context, in case it's useful to you, Pfizer, for some weird reason, have spent $150 million in
2009 by Pfizer. Good year for them. Who is that in power? Can't remember.
lobbying over the last 15 years. But as they've made $102 billion this year, that's not very much, is it? Now, round 3 of We Beat Big Pharma this year. Johnson & Johnson legal
Especially
cases and bankruptcy clauses. Listen to this story. This is the final round.
Right. What's that? Serious horror? Not getting any horror vibes, I'll be honest. Cool.
COVID vaccine maker Johnson.
Glad I didn't skip that one.
That's not very much, is it? Now round 3 of We Beat Big Pharma this year. Johnson & Johnson legal cases
hello
and bankruptcy clauses. Listen to this story. This is the final round. COVID vaccine maker Johnson & Johnson. Hey, we don't just make vaccines. We do a bloody good line in talcum powder. We make baby foods. We do a lot of stuff over at Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson, valued at more than $400 billion, are using a controversial legal maneuver in bankruptcy court to freeze 38,000 lawsuits claiming that trace amounts of asbestos contamination in Johnson's baby powder caused ovarian cancer and mesothelioma. But it's only 38,000 cases, you know. That's like 38,000 people. That's 38,000 coincidences. That's what that sounds like to me. Why I love these stories is they all demonstrate how the law and how politics more broadly support the interests of powerful corporations. The law is meant to be there to protect who? I thought the people, and the political parties are meant to be in the service of the people. But in every single example that we're citing here, where are you benefiting unless you are a shareholder? I don't mean this maliciously, in one of those companies, in which case you would be benefiting, but also you're a human being in that case, right? And what about the ovarian cancer that is allegedly caused? Wouldn't that be a bit of a problem compared to money? And Biden is down! The FDA announced in October 2019 that it found asbestos in one sample of Johnson's baby powder. Well, Johnson & Johnson and the FDA probably don't have a curious, murky, financially motivated relationship, so let's get on with the science. Let's follow that science, see where it leads us. J&J pulled its iconic Johnson's baby powder off the shelves in the US in 2020. We better not sell that anymore and never mention it again and file for bankruptcy even though we're worth $400 billion. The company says it took the step only because bad publicity had hurt sales. We just gotta get rid of that bad press, you know. What about also, though, not giving ovarian cancer to your customers? Oh, yeah, no, that sounds, does that sound good from a PR angle? Yeah, that sounds bad. It's that then. After one baby powder trial in Oklahoma in 2018, Johnson & Johnson was eventually forced to pay 22 women with ovarian cancer more than $2 billion. Fucking hell. My God. 22 women. So, like, there's 38,000 trials. And because there's a precedent, they're going to have to pay those people. Their whole brand is about how we protect children.
Johnson's baby powder is the answer.
That's the difference between perception and reality. The perception-reality gap. Ah! Perception. Johnson & Johnson, for your cute little lovely old baby. Oh, hold on a minute. I think I've got cancer in that. Well, that's nothing to do with us. Get that shit off the goddamn shelf. That must be your fault. Are you a bad person? Are you recycling? But with most cases still pending, the company found a way to stop the legal process in civil court using a complex bankruptcy strategy known in legal circles as the Texas two-step. The old Texas two-step. First we step on your soul, and then we kick you up in your balls. Then we kick you in this ovary, bam, and then we kick you in that ovary. Texas two-step. Here's how the maneuver worked. First, last October, J&J spun off a subsidiary in Texas called LTL. Then, using a wrinkle in Texas state law, J&J was able to transfer all of the potential liability linked to the tsunami of baby powder asbestos claims. Let me just say that again.
Is it funny, or is it just the world we fucking live in?
Powder asbestos claims into the shell of the new company while keeping valuable assets separate. Oh, yeah, no, that was those guys. Johnson & Johnson. That was actually another Johnson that lives in the attic. That son of a bitch!
Johnson's baby powder is the answer.
Me ovaries. So it's all on that guy and the shell company that he's long had. We over here at Johnson & Johnson, we deplore Johnson. We're just here making those vaccines. Could we get that indemnity? Could you sign it quickly? Sign the fucking indemnity now. Here's another $150 million. Sign the indemnity. LTL then quickly filed for bankruptcy in North Carolina. This is your planet. This is your flag. We beat Big Pharma this year. Can you still do it?
Come on, man.
That move immediately halted the baby powder cases, which could remain on hold for months or years. Speaking on a public conference call with investors in October, one of J&J's top executives defended the strategy. How dare you? There's an established process that allows companies to resolve claims in an efficient and equitable manner, where we don't go bankrupt for all of the cancer we cause people in their ovaries. Allegedly, said J&J Chief Financial Officer Joseph Goebbels. I mean, woke! Woke! J&J have spent over $100 million in law.
They're just pouring money in. This is a different graph now.
Lobbying over the last 20 years. So, like, if you think that there is a connection between this favourable legislation and the $100 million received in lobbying, then you are the conspiracy theorist, because Joe Biden, President of the United States of America, has told you several times now that we beat Big Pharma this year. Are you suggesting that that's empty, phatic, hollow political rhetoric that doesn't really mean anything, particularly not if you've got ovarian cancer and are now unlikely to receive any remuneration for that ovarian cancer? Legal experts tell NPR that a growing number of wealthy companies, organisations and individuals accused of serious wrongdoings are using similar bankruptcy tactics, hoping to delay or permanently block lawsuits. They found openings in state and federal law that allow them to leverage the sweeping power wielded by bankruptcy judges when cutting deals, but they're not being forced to endure the financial pain and exposure that comes with actually filing for bankruptcy. Brilliant, brilliant. Often this means creating a new subsidiary and pushing it into bankruptcy, as in the J&J case. In other instances, wealthy companies or organisations are able to piggyback on the bankruptcies of other companies which are actually insolvent. Can I get a little of that? These bankruptcy manoeuvres have quietly reshaped some of the most important legal cases of recent years. Members of the Sackler family, who owned Purdue Pharma, aren't themselves bankrupt. Oh, that's good. In March, they reached a deal with a group with attorney generals to pay up to $6 billion in exchange for sweeping protection from lawsuits that accused them of marketing OxyContin in ways that fueled the opioid epidemic. OxyContin alone generated approximately $30 billion in revenue for Purdue over the years. So, in a sense, all those deaths, perhaps of people you know and love, were profitable for the Purdue family. So it's not all bad news if you are a member of the Purdue family. Johnson & Johnson, not that Johnson though, that guy, that guy's crackers, stay away from him. Or Pfizer executives, thank you Big Pharma for helping us, and thank you Joe Biden for beating Big Pharma this year. What a glorious victory, what a glorious democracy, what a glorious representation of all that is possible with the endeavour and ingenuity and hard work of the American people. What you might think is that the President Joe Biden, in order to shake his fist and say those things, one, should probably have some sort of arthritis injection. Be careful that it's from Johnson & Johnson, though, and not Johnson, that wanker, before making such ludicrous claims. And that we should live in a world where Big Pharma are regulated and responsible, and when they release products that in some way harm people, those people should be remunerated and that process should be stopped. That they should be regulated by an independent governing body where ordinary people have access to the information, and legal indemnity is never granted to companies that have a rich history, and I emphasise the word rich history, of harming their customers and clients. Why don't we bring some values into the core of our system? Why do we not embrace the divine and become an expression of it? Why do we not admit that as individuals we are flawed, but if each of us is willing to undertake the challenges and tasks of conquering our own moral dilemmas, we can create a beautiful society together? Because it's quite difficult, is the reason. But we can do it! We can! I know we can, and I know you can. Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Also, sign up to our mailing list right now and watch us every day on Rumble, where we can say exactly what we want to say. We beat censorship this year! We beat censorship this year! Stay free!
I like the pictures. Doesn't have any pictures. I like the pictures. Ugh, especially cartoon Russ.
Some things leave you guessing. MailChimp analyzes data from billions of emails to offer suggestions.
Shut the fuck up.
I mean, you all know.
What was the other underground bunker? DSTL. Rumble seems a bit more open to free speech, is that right? Yeah, he's moved over to there because he's having his videos censored. And you just literally can't say certain things on YouTube anymore. You talked about the censorship earlier. I've seen it. I like that Wayback Machine though. It's good. Because then you can't get rid of it. .uk. Is that there? Yep. What? Why is it on here? So that's just a rip-off of Boston, basically. Cool, fair enough. Interesting that it's on the Gov website, and like, just not their own. Zoomies. Why not? Where's the fucking terrain then? Okay. You're not even allowed your bloke on this road. Surely that's public. Oop. Keep out. Ooh, who's that dude? He's going. Oh, it's blurred. Oh. Can't go in. Nah. Go back, come on. I thought oh, gotta extend my chat box. Just how unoften people come in. Big Dog, yeah. Yeah, Hyundai have bought Boston Dynamics, if you're interested.
Behind barbed wire on Salisbury Plain sits the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory. Government-sponsored, its staff tasked with cutting-edge research, science that can help
Guns.
defend the nation.
High security, attached to the MOD, DSTL has always been shrouded with a certain level of mystery. But what really
Even your lanyard.
happens here? We've been invited behind the scenes to take a look.
Research has taken place at Porton Down Science Park for more than a century, but the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory was only officially formed in 2001. Customers include the MOD and Home Office, government departments that have spent more than £600 million between them here last year, with capabilities including counter-terrorism and cybersecurity. Identities are protected and filming very restricted.
Basically,
The work done here is at the forefront of research and development for national security and defence. The men and women here doing science that no one else can do. And at times of national crisis, they really come into their own.
From designing the V-shaped hull of the Foxhound to reduce deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan, to analysis of the explosives used in the Manchester Arena terror attack, and even the decontamination of Salisbury after the Novichok nerve agent incident. DSTL scientists are primed to respond to any catastrophe.
Black JCB.
And with their experience of investigating the makeup and behaviour of dangerous pathogens, that includes COVID-19. Professor Tim has worked on chemical, biological and radiological cases for more than 20 years. He took us into the corridor at the heart of their work on coronavirus.
This is where we're handling pathogens such as plague, anthrax, and the virus that causes COVID-19 currently. So obviously we're very careful. These are dangerous pathogens, and so we have a number of systems that allow us to handle those safely and to make sure that the environment is protected from those pathogens.
That's just Joe on different devices.
The labs are held under negative air pressure to prevent anything leaving them that shouldn't. 80 microbiologists work in this arm of DSTL alone.
And you can see quite a big capability here, so probably one of the biggest capabilities in terms of handling dangerous pathogens in the United Kingdom, and that makes us reasonably unique. And this facility here is specifically is the one where we are currently doing the experiments with COVID-19.
Scientists are necessarily cautious with the virus. COVID-19 cultures are handled in sealed glove boxes. DSTL's teams are searching for knowledge on the pathogen, and their findings are key to the nation moving through this pandemic.
We're doing a variety of tests, but really they centre around characterising the virus itself and understanding how it behaves when it's aerosolised, how it behaves, for example, when it deposits on surfaces, how long does it survive, what's the effect of light, what's the effect of humidity. That sort of information is used, for example, in modelling that SAGE used to determine and advise what the government response will be going forwards.
With the government increasing the number of COVID-19 tests over the last few months, DSTL staff were deployed across the country to help meet demand. Emma was one of them.
It's a totally different kind of pressure. The turnaround time that they managed to achieve is phenomenal, especially considering the amount of samples they're getting in, and it's really pushing, I think, science as an industry to their limits to develop all these new ways of working and new tests and to kind of keep evolving to meet the demands that the country needs.
Protecting frontline workers has formed another big part of DSTL's work since the pandemic began. When ambulance services reported decontamination of their vehicles taking too long, staff designed a new way to cut times down to just minutes.
Grenade.
And when the country faced a national shortage of the bitter and sweet-tasting sprays needed to test the fit of face masks, the labs found a way to plug the gap overnight.
It's not particularly difficult chemistry, if I may, but it's something that we're not used to doing here, and we had to establish a capability very quickly indeed in order to produce these solutions in extremis.
So if I was working with somebody with COVID-19, would put this on, tighten up the straps, make sure that everything's in fitting properly, and then that solution, if I could taste it, it would mean that there was an issue with this fit.
Yes, and we to date have manufactured about 21,000 units of fit test solution, and I'm reliably told that those solutions have enabled capabilities like the London Nightingale Hospital to become operational.
Reacting to national crises is just one arm of DSTL. The labs plan for the future too. Their staff are pushing boundaries in robotics and autonomy, constantly looking for ways to improve safety for both the public and the military.
Our job is to think out of the box. What can the technology do for the future warfighter, and how do we counter that really dangerous, uncertain world? There are lots of things that we can't talk very publicly about because of the classified nature of the work. But by the same token, there are a bunch of things that we are doing that we can share and we can talk about, and we're trying to do so that people understand the role we play significantly at the heart of defence and securing the nation's future. Defending maritime assets against things like a fast and short patrol craft threat, or unmanned air systems. We have unmanned air systems operational now, and we have had for a while. What's the next generation of those? But also for the Army, how do we get supplies right down to the front line in combat situations, for example, which is quite a dangerous mission for the future.
With a string of national crises raising DSTL's profile of late, new buildings being built, expertise being harnessed by the government, the work of these labs looks set to remain in demand.
Okay, let's do some cobalt.
Know my history. I was, so you'll say you don't, okay. I was raised in a Jesuit orphanage in Canada, in British Columbia, and I spent from 1976 there to 1979 in this place. I've been involved with Opus Dei heavily. I've been involved with the Vatican heavily. And I was indoctrinated into MI6 SIS at 5 years old. And I was trained. I came over to England in 79. You know, I settled into England in the early 80s with a foster family. That's the Casbolt family. And I was indoctrinated into that. I started live operations in my teens with them, and that was under the cover of drug wars in London and in areas like Brighton. I was given diplomatic immunity in my teens.
What do you mean?
And I killed my first man when I was 16 years old in Brighton, and that was a child porn ring that was being run there. There was a guy involved in that, and I shot him outside a place called the Shark Bar on the Brighton seafront in broad daylight in front of multiple witnesses. I've got over 200 confirmed kills since I was a teenager, all through the 90s, and from 2000 to 2012. Just carried on. I was genetically enhanced over a period of years, not just my mind, my body.
Right.
And on my records it says I've got over 200 kills.
Right. So it's saying that you've killed 200 people, even though that you're not aware of it.
Oh, I remember killing not 200 people. I remember killing a fair amount of people.
Right. So
as recently as 2007 in South London.
Right. So but this would be under some kind of mind control, so that you don't blame yourself for those killings. Then you blame whoever's programmed.
I mean, I know some of the people I've killed. I know their names.
All right.
Maybe under the umbrella. I don't know, because you can't put the little man down on the map. I would have thought they would have public roads if they were private tech companies.
I mean, some of them were terrorists, and I don't, no problem with me. No,
right.
You know, I'd do it again if I had to, and I won't lose any sleep over it.
Right. So how conscious were you of? I interviewed a guy called John Irwin, who claims to have had not the same but a similar thing in the late 50s, where he was fully conscious of everything that he was doing when he was murdering these people. He was just, it was, you know of John Irwin, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was mainly the close combat techniques that were programmed into him, rather than the actual mission, you know. So when, obviously, if you're going to go and kill someone, you've conscious of it. That how come you're not arrested and then banged up?
Because it's state sanctioned execution.
Right. Okay. And how much are you doing it by your own volition then, and how much is it done because you've been programmed?
Well, it's all the lines are blurred now.
Right.
Whereas in the recent years, I've volunteered for some of it.
Right. So when
there's been a big war that's broken out in the intelligence community, and where I'm having to take the fight to people now, or else I'm not going to survive.
Right. So when obviously throughout your teens and childhood, where did you grow up? Like say from the age of 10 upwards, where were you there?
I was being moved around the world,
right,
countries.
All right.
Being trained.
Right. So when you've murdered these people, what was the technique that you've used?
Various things. 2007 was myself and another individual. We travelled. Well, I won't say where we travelled from, but we travelled to an area in South London.
Right.
And we were. I won't say too many details about him because it's not my place to speak for him. The guy that was with me.
So you were both in this mission together then?
Yeah.
Right, as a team sort
of
thing, right?
Twin team, yeah.
Right, so what was the method of execution?
Well, we waited in our car, MI6 Jeep pulled up, and this guy got out, gave us a briefcase, but before he gave us a briefcase, he gave us a trigger word.
Right.
Which, and it's not just trigger words, they use a combination of hardware to activate implants, but it's that state of mind that
they can put you in,
that I'll go into which is I'll be very cold and efficient, and all that matters is the target, the mission. That's all that matters. That's all that exists.
But what was the actual method?
Well, he gave us the briefcase. It had a gun, Smith & Wesson. I was often given the same gun. It's a 9mm Smith & Wesson with a pearl handle on it, and it's got a symbol of a black dragon on the handle.
That's beautiful.
And
beautiful.
I call that gun Drago.
Yeah,
and I've used that gun many times.
So it's a shot to the head at close range then?
No, we went to a house and went in the house. I had a guy to a chair.
Went to the house?
Put a pillowcase over his head and I shot him in the face all the time.
I wouldn't say too much, but...
So would that not be reported in the media? Would that not be picked up? Would local police not then be called? Would that not then... Is there no prospect of that then getting out to...
I don't know. I tried to research
so how would
certain killings, like certain things that happened in Brighton when I was 16, 17 years old.
So you would then be picked up by... I mean, how would you then get away from the murder scene without being caught by the normal police?
Well, you just walk out.
Right.
Just walk out of the house, shut the door, get back in the car.
You're barking
drive to
in your sleep.
To the operatives that gave the briefcase, give them the briefcase back and go home.
Right.
It's not really rocket science.
Wow.
What's it like being a Rothschild? Well, of course, I'm the wrong person to ask because I was born a Rothschild and I'm still a Rothschild, so I don't know what it's like to be anyone else. So, I think you become aware the name has a kind of pulling power, and the name sometimes gets a second.
Poor woman, caught up in it all. You got Remo. You got tennis court for some reason. No one goes to that gym. What's all this parking for? Oh, hello. A little runway. Nah, I don't see hangers. Looks like a find the Rothschild assassination stuff. Alright, yeah, okay. That looks like a hangar. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, worst gardens ever. It's getting all fuzzy. What are the car parks for? One, two, or three.
All right. Well, at least it was nice weather. You got to look at the bright side there, guys. Best of both. Mr. Secretary,
It's
so
good
good
to
to
meet
see
you.
you. Thank you for inviting me over. I
Oh
appreciate
no.
it.
Thanks for coming, and it's good to finally meet you. Since I've heard that you're absolutely devil incarnate. I wanted to meet you.
Hi, everybody. This is Tiffany Cook with Kirtishan Cares. We have someone on the line today that we're going to ask a few questions to.
Oh, what's you tell me which one? Oh yeah, man. Have a good one.
The pandemic has radically changed the world as we know it, and the actions we take today as we work to recover will define our generation.
Now is the time to think what history would say about this crisis.
2020 has been challenging on a lot of levels, as economic, environmental and societal frailties have been laid bare. But it's also proved that when we need to, we can act rapidly and restructure our lives.
The recovery from the pandemic is an opportunity. We can see rays of hope in the form of a vaccine, but there is no vaccine for the planet. Nature needs a bailout.
You don't want to go back to the status quo that you had before simply because it was the status quo that got us here.
With everything falling apart, we can reshape the world in ways we couldn't before. Ways that better address so many of the challenges we face. And that's why so many are calling for a great reset. A great reset? That sounds more like buzzword bingo masking some nefarious plan for world domination. Hands up, this kind of slogan hasn't gone down well. But all we really want to say is that we all have an opportunity to build a better world. And it's not surprising that people who've been disenfranchised by a broken system and pushed even further by the pandemic will suspect global leaders of conspiracy. But the world's not that simple. Every one of us has differing priorities, values, and ideas. That's part of why solutions are so hard to come by, and why we all need to be involved in the decision making. Because whether it's politicians, CEOs, academics, activists, or you, we're all about getting people together, even those you may not like, to sit down at the table and develop solutions that work for all of us. But
we need enormous trust between the private sector and the public sector for this to actually work. That trust is hard to come by.
it's time for people to work together, listen to each other, and build this trust so we can move towards a better world. And we really need one. Because while the pandemic affects us all, it's clear it affects some more than others.
The first people who are hit are the people at the front, those who are vulnerable. It is those on the front line who take it first, and that is simply unacceptable.
See, at the start of 2020, 1% of the world's population owned 44% of the wealth. And since the start of the pandemic, billionaires have increased theirs by more than 25%, whilst 150 million people fell back into extreme poverty. And with climate change set to dwarf the damage caused by the pandemic, the message from 2020 should be abundantly clear.
Capitalism, as we know it, is dead. This obsession that we have had with maximizing profits for shareholders alone has led to incredible inequality and a planetary emergency.
But no one can do this alone, and top-down approaches won't get us anywhere, because everything we've learned in our work has shown us that diverse voices lead to better results. And it's for these reasons that the forum talks about something called stakeholder capitalism, which would shift businesses away from just profit. Because
if we want to change where the focus of our recovery will go, then we need a new dashboard for the new economy. And that needs to encompass people, planet, prosperity, and institutions.
Giving people a real stake in the economy and putting well-being before growth. And that's all about getting the right people in the right place at the right time.
We must rebuild our relationship with nature for the survival of the peoples and our planet.
We have a window of time which is closing, and we need everybody who cares to get together and find solutions now.
It's the people who have great ideas and who share them with others. They're the ones who are shaping the future. So if you want to be a part of the change, then tune in, turn on, and get involved. Follow the Davos Agenda, right here, online, on YouTube.
Dissolve this soft mineral on your tongue for 30 30 seconds at bedtime and turn back years of tooth decay.
Who are the Bilderberg Group, and why do they meet every year? What do they talk about? And why the secrecy? Do they intend to rule the world?
So over there, the world's power elite are gathering.
We all talk about a democracy that isn't there.
People want to know what's going on, what they're talking about.
A global tyranny that would have made George Orwell wince.
Crashed into one of the towers.
Why is it that for years it was even denied the Bilderberg Group even existed?
There are splits among the people who run modern capitalist societies, and so they have meetings.
Is the Bilderberg Group the true elite that rules the world? Do they manipulate presidents and economies to their advantage and manipulate us to believe that we have a voice and a choice?
By the time I was born, both my grandfathers had died already, but I heard many stories about them. What I gathered from these stories is that I must believe in myself and have principles, and that many times an idea can be more important than one's self. I did believe in myself, and when I moved from the world of economics to the world of theater, I witnessed that dedicated group effort in theater troupes is what makes an idea succeed. I also learned that even though I may sometimes be romantic, I always reject any form of injustice. It is not strange that we hear of individuals forming groups with the intention to hold power and rise above the people and democracy.
Bilderberg Group.
Bilderberg.
The Bilderberg Group.
But there is one group which many people believe is the board of directors of the world, the Bilderberg Group. Who are these people?
The billionaires, politicians, bankers, and European royalty.
So over there, the world's power elite are gathering.
People want to know what's going on, what they're talking about.
If we cross that police tape, we'll be arrested.
For me, what is said about the extra secrecy of the group raises questions. What are they trying to hide, if they are hiding anything? But even with their strict confidentiality, we may know a few things. We know, for instance, that the Bilderberg meetings were initiated by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands in 1954 in the Bilderberg Hotel in Holland. The meeting takes place every year in a different place. We may also know the general topics discussed in the meetings. And it says in the website of the group that participants can use any information they received in the meetings without revealing the names of the speakers or participants. David Icke is a British journalist and a famous conspiracy theorist who has researched the Bilderberg Group and wrote more than 20 books.
Can you tell me about when the Bilderberg Group first met and for what exactly?
The Bilderberg Group first met in 1954 at the Bilderberg Hotel in Oosterbeek, Holland. To understand the timing of the creation of the Bilderberg Group is to understand what World War II was really about.
Total Battle is a vast medieval universe.
Wars are used to transform a society. The status quo is gone, and you create another. And in the aftermath of World War II, that's when the status quo was transformed into a world structure. That's when globalization really started to take off. And in there is the Bilderberg Group in 1954, which was a part of this coordination strategy between different countries to create this common push in a desired direction. This is a classic organization drawing together prominent and influential people in all areas of human life. Politicians, some journalists who have a golden rule: you don't report what happened at the Bilderberg meeting. These are military people, intelligence people, many, many heads of major global corporations. And what the Bilderberg Group is a way of bringing these people together to form a common policy. And many of the people, most of the people that turn up have no idea what the big goal is. And a lot of these people come and go, and are never seen again. They're just useful in a short space of time. But then you have others like David Rockefeller, who has been involved in the Bilderberg Group from the start. Henry Kissinger, the same. These people span the whole period of the group's existence.
Couldn't we say that they were or are just some sort of a lobby group that are protecting their interest?
A lobby group for what is the question I would have. This is not a lobby group for a certain company, even a lobby group for a certain government. Why is it that for years it was even denied the Bilderberg Group even existed? They are a global elite which work to push human society into the direction of a global tyranny that would have made George Orwell wince.
What are you thinking about? We can't just keep blaming everyone else for everything wrong that's happening in the world. We blame others when we feel powerless. The question is, maybe they're not a secret society and they're just a private one.
From what is written about the group, it seems they are indeed impressive in their breadth and power. But there are other powerful groups that meet regularly, like the G7 and the G20. The major difference here is that those meetings are not secret. If the Bilderberg Group is indeed the shadow world government, well, they are doing a terrible job. Or maybe they are getting exactly what they want. And is it really true that after they discuss something in their agenda, then we see surprising effects in the real world? There are people that find it difficult to believe that the oil shock of 1973 could have been masterminded by the Bilderberg Group, as many claim. For starters, the United States Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, had not attended that year. But at the press conference of the following Bilderberg meeting in 1974, the declarations of Prince Bernhard could raise some questions.
L'année dernière, le thème, c'était la possible crise d'énergie. Sans savoir, nous étions des petits prophètes et la crise d'énergie est venue beaucoup plus vite que tout le monde des participants ont pensé.
I want to ask the American economist Dr. Richard D. Wolff about the relation between democracy, capital, and the Bilderberg Group.
I wanted to talk to you about the Bilderberg Group. Why do you think these people meet regularly?
There are splits and disagreements among the people who run modern capitalist societies. And one of the big issues they disagree about is whether or not they really can rely on the capitalist system and the market to manage modern society in a way that allows them to keep their dominant position, their wealth, their influence, and so on. There are those who believe that the market is a fantastic institution, that if each corporation does exactly what is most profitable for it, this will work out to be the best possible society for everyone. Then there are other corporate leaders who say that the levels of inequality common to capitalist societies create severe vulnerability, that you are going to make the mass of people who have middle or low income eventually decide to use their political power, they are the majority, to use politics to undo the results of a capitalist private economic market system. And that therefore you must take steps to deal with that. Notice, everybody has agreed among them that what they want is capitalism to continue. The people to run the corporations continue. But one group doesn't want to worry about taking care of social problems, and the other group does. And so they have meetings because these disagreements can become explosive.
Do you think this group uses their capital to overcome democracy and the will of the people?
They have no interest in democracy. They never did. And let me explain why. Every one of these people, they operate their enterprises in a fundamentally anti-democratic way. For example, the board of directors does not submit its proposals or its strategies to the entire employees to get their approval. That would be a democratic way to run an enterprise. They don't do that.
Hi.
What the enterprise is in capitalism is a systematic training of the population against democracy. If you spend 5 days a week, 9 to 5, at your factory or in your office, you are in an environment that teaches you to accept orders from whoever is above you in the hierarchy. There is no democratic control. We all talk about a democracy that isn't there. And partly the talk is a compensation because it isn't the reality. 300 years ago, we got rid of kings, but the kings didn't go away. They were clever. They went inside the capitalist corporation and they changed their name. It's now CEO.
Would you say that these kind of groups are think tanks, or they're rather the biggest capitalist lobby ever?
I prefer the lobby because thinking is not their strong suit. What they do is they hire people to do the thinking for them. I went to all the elite schools in this country. I know all these people. They're managers. That's what they've been trained to do, to manage, to identify who they can rely on, who has technical knowledge of this or that. So they bring people like me, a critic of the system. They want to know how people like me look at all of this. And I always have an ambivalent feeling, wondering to myself, who am I helping here? You know, these are not my people, you know.
We are laughing, but it actually feels hopeless. Do you think there is any way around this?
In the heyday, when these systems are powerful, they are powerful because they have persuaded the mass of people that it must be this way.
From the first time I heard stories about my grandfathers, I had a heroic and maybe naive view of the world. As I grew up and learned more, that challenge was to keep the flame inside me alive. To believe that I can be part of the change. It is tempting to believe that we have no power, that our votes don't matter, that our protests don't matter. I believe they only matter if we ask the right questions.
So if you have any regard for your own personal health, longevity, and performance, then...
If you had a day where nobody would recognize you.
I don't think I'd be that different, honestly. I dropped the whole trying to be something for somebody a long time ago, so I pretty much walk through the world except when I want to be funny or I want to do something outrageous. I don't have any trouble being myself, and I don't have any trouble saying no when I mean no. I don't feel there is a, pressing responsibility to please everyone. I'm not unkind to people. No. I love people. I would much prefer saying hello and who are you and what are you doing today than giving a selfie, because selfies stop the world. They stop life. You then go like that, and it's going on Instagram to give people a false sense of relevance.
People talk about depression all the time. The difference between depression and sadness is just, from happenstance. Whatever happened or didn't happen for you, or, grief or whatever it is. And depression is your body saying, I don't want to be this character anymore. I don't want to hold up this avatar that you've created in the world. It's too much for me. Deep rest. Your body needs to be depressed. It needs deep rest from the character that you've been trying to play.
I act because I'm broken in a lot of pieces. And acting gives me a chance to reconfigure those pieces into 1,000 different things that are positive for people to watch.
Was there a moment where you first sort of realized, like, I want to be a performer. This is the thing that I want to do with my life?
There was never any other choice. From the time that there was consciousness in the body, I was looking at a man named Percy, my dad, who was the most incredible character that you'd ever meet. If you met him for 5 minutes, you thought you knew him for 50 years. Wow. And he wrapped everyone that came into our house in stories and jokes, and I became his calling at a certain point. And he was always super behind me. But from the first time I can remember, him just lighting up the room, and him just like wrapping everybody in a story or whatever, and going, oh, that's the thing I want to do. That's what I want to be.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. I watched the effect of my father's love and humor and how it altered the world around me. And I thought, that's something to do. That's something worth my time. It wasn't long before I started acting up. People would come over to the house and they'd be greeted by a 7-year-old throwing himself down a large flight of stairs. They would say, what happened? And I would say, I don't know. Let's check the replay. I'd go back to the top of the stairs and come back down in slow motion. Now, fear is going to be a player in your life, but you get to decide how much. You can spend your whole life.
All right, Fitbit, let's hit this new move.
In April 1968, the British Air Force was struggling with massive budget cuts, and morale was at rock bottom. As the Air Force's 50th anniversary approached, most pilots expected a huge celebration with air shows, but politicians refused even that. so one of the pilots took matters into his own hands. Flight Lieutenant Alan Pollock was a commander of the Royal Air Force No. 1 Fighter Squadron. This tradition-steeped unit had not only fought in World War I, but also participated in the famous Battle of Britain in World War II. For this very reason, it was particularly painful for Pollock that April 1st was celebrated without overflights and air shows. As ordered, the 50th anniversary passed without festivities, and there wasn't even a memorial service for the more than 38,000 fallen pilots. But the commander decided not to leave it at that, and his chance was to come just 4 days later. On April 5th, Pollock climbed into his Hawker Hunter aircraft and took off for Norfolk with other fighter jets. It was to be a quiet, low-key flight to take the planes back to their home base. Shortly after takeoff, however, Pollock suddenly left formation and reported that he was having problems with his radio and lost visual contact with the formation. He would fly back to the home airfield alone and meet his comrades there. The other pilots suspected nothing and continued their flight. Now Pollock's real plan could begin. Instead of heading for Norfolk, he first made a low-level pass over a friendly airbase to kick off the Royal Air Force's birthday. After that, he headed for his main target, London. Again, he flew low over the city and then circled the Houses of Parliament 3 times with thundering engines to demonstrate against budget cuts and let politicians know they still had a fighting Air Force, as he later described. After Pollock flew over the RAF Memorial, which honors the fallen pilots of World War I, the famous Tower Bridge suddenly appeared in front of him. Until this very instant, I'd had absolutely no idea that, of course, Tower Bridge would be there. It was easy enough to fly over it, but the idea of flying through the spans suddenly struck me. I had just 10 seconds to grapple with a seductive proposition which few ground attack pilots of any nationality could have resisted. My brain started racing to reach a decision. Years of fast, low-level strike flying made the decision simple. Without any notice, he then flew right through Tower Bridge, passing cars and pedestrians only a few feet away. The gap between bridge piers was just 200 feet wide and 100 feet high. After the breathtaking maneuver, the commander paid visits to many more Air Force bases before passing his final airfield upside down, performing a perfect landing and being immediately arrested. The politicians and superiors of Pollock wanted to put him on trial and kick him out of the Air Force, but they knew that he would most likely gain public approval with the justification for his flight maneuvers. A disclosure of the true motives would harm them far more than the pilot himself. After Pollock was held in a mental institution for 2 days, 6 members of Parliament publicly sided with him. Hundreds of congratulatory letters arrived from RAF pilots across the country, and a civilian airline even sent him a barrel of beer. As a result, the Air Force had the perfectly healthy pilot discharged for medical reasons to prevent him from speaking out publicly. The proud RAF pilot nevertheless turned to the public and received encouragement and support from all sides. 14 years later, Pollock was officially cleared of all allegations concerning his protest flight. For the Royal Air Force's 100th anniversary, the Air Force had air shows going on for days. Good for them, as Pollock pointed out in an interview. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving
Bravo 6 to what you want. Position at the cafe. 2 of the tables at my 3 o'clock. 1 cartel, 1 Iranian.
How cozy. What are they up to?
Conducting a transaction.
Electronically.
Affirm.
They're paying the cartel for something.
Let's figure out what.
Security?
Several.
I'll deal with them.
Well, don't take all the fun, eh?
Copy. Coming your way now.
Syringe.
Poison?
Non-lethal. It'll take him out of commission.
CIA shit.
Welcome to my world. Use the needle on the guards and we roll up our cartel friend.
And you?
Exfil. Say when.
Roger that.
06, sit rep.
I'm talking timeline.
When are they moving?
Tonight.
Stay on them. We need to know what it is and where it's going.
Copy.
So basically, if the ball is loose...
Boring. I think that was console by the way he was looking. It wasn't a mouse movement, so therefore it was going to be shit anyway, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, people believe that Trump addressed them, if idiosyncratically and eccentrically and even narcissistically, at least directly, honestly, and in an unscripted manner. And Trump was very good at, well, that's the populist danger that the leftists point to, is that Trump could and did to some degree appeal to resentment, and that's very dangerous, especially for a conservative. I think he was also pushed into a corner on that front, because he was pilloried so badly that it's not surprising that he regarded himself as surrounded by enemies, right? And you can create a monster by persecuting someone intently. And I'm saying that as someone who I think is cognizant and appreciative of whatever Donald Trump's flaws might be. But it's definitely the case that the working class felt that they had been shunted out of the conversation. And the reason they felt that way was because they had been shunted out of the conversation. And it's certainly the case, if that wasn't true in some fundamental sense, you wouldn't have seen the trucker protests in Canada, the corresponding protests in the US, and now the spread of this into Europe, right? You can't just put that at Trump's feet by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, in fact, I would argue that their demands are very reasonable, right? Because if you look at the numbers, they have been very successful in reducing emissions over the last couple of years. So we mentioned this before. Really, Dutch agriculture is astounding. I would argue it's one of the innovative wonders of the world. And they mostly complain about the timeline. So again, it's not that they say, no, we want to continue to emit as much as possible. No, they just say that 2030, 2035, and 2050 is not feasible for us. We can't do it in that timeline. And the argument that comes...
Yeah. He's crazy. He's a psychologist. That's what he was. Just, you went and spoke to him and he said, get better in a certain way. Mate, like, what a good psychologist to have, I think, as well. And he's ready to argue the point that they have brought up. I don't say he's ready. I'd say he's... I don't know if it's experience or whatever, but he's prepared at all times for whatever he wants to say. And yeah, just can't argue with him really.
Back as well, but these are EU regulations. Well, that is true, but
yeah, whatever.
Exactly, and it's something that Bjorn said also before. Well, of course they have more nitrogen emissions. They are the #1 agricultural producing country in Europe. So I mean, it's kind of natural that they have more emissions, and they did have an exception for a long time, and they pretty much only want that exception to continue.
Yeah, with knowledge, with wisdom comes insanity. Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm Ed Winchester.
We'll just do like the first 10 minutes.
Been developing their ancient ideas.
I'm a 27-year-old transgender woman, Miami Wolf-Therian, and a member of the furry fandom.
When and how? And culture warrior, one of the...
The students found them extremely useful.
Should any lectures, almost 40 million people have now seen this notorious interview with a British news show.
You're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me, and that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
Except you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Gotcha. Ha! Gotcha. Celebrity friends face criticism just for meeting him. He's loved, he's loathed, but he's never ignored. And tonight, Jordan Peterson is uncensored. Well, Jordan Peterson joins me now. Jordan Peterson, welcome.
Thank you.
To Piers Morgan Uncensored. I suppose my first question, and there will be people genuinely wanting a simple answer, but there's a bigger answer too. Who is Jordan Peterson?
Well, I'm a clinical psychologist
but not in
and
a place. He was
professor.
just explaining what
and
she was doing.
I'm
to
doing
what she
that
was
on a
trying to
broader
achieve.
scale now, I suppose.
And on the
but it's an
subject
extension of
of
what I've done
misinformation and
since
talking about it.
1987,
You're in a
really.
news room
And
that are blatantly
I taught the same
propaganda
things
in
I'm
it, so,
teaching,
you
although I've expanded them.
He knew where he
Throughout
was.
my academic career, and my classes were very popular, and not popular exactly. The students found them extremely useful. And
Should any lectures at any university ever be popular, or should they always be challenging? Is one of the problems we have in modern society that students aren't challenged enough?
Well, they were challenging. They were plenty challenging. I mean, the students had two comments usually. They said, it's very difficult for me to talk to anyone else about what I'm learning in this class because it's so different, and also that it changed the way I looked at everything. So there's no shortage of challenge. Yeah, I mean, everyone wants an optimal challenge. You know, that's in the nature of play, to have an optimal challenge.
Why have you become so notorious? Because I look at it as, I've actually watched a lot of your lectures. I've listened to hours of you and Joe Rogan talking about stuff. I don't see the devil that some people try and portray you as, at all. And it seems to me the one thing some people try and portray you as.
Look at that, not even bothered. He's just so over that.
At all.
He's so over all the hate.
And it seems to me the one thing we may share in common is certainly not intellectual prowess, where unfortunately I'm many yards behind you. But what we do share, I think, is that a lot of people seem to have drawn an opinion about us based on either what they've seen in a tiny clip, taken out of context a lot of the time, or what they've been told to think about you by other people.
Yeah, well, that's some of it. I mean, I got tangled up in a political controversy in Canada. I mean, tangled up. I put my foot in it to some degree because I wasn't very happy with what I regarded as government overreach in relationship to who is in possession of my tongue. And I decided a long time ago, and really a long time ago, that I was going to say what I thought, and sort of independent of the outcome. You know, often people craft their speech. You know, I could have come here on your show, for example. I spent half an hour thinking, well, what do I want out of this show? But I don't think like that. I wanted to come here and have a conversation with you.
You don't actually make notes, I'm told, before your big
I make
lectures and
notes, but I
speeches.
generally don't use them. So I have to prepare, you know.
And are they different when you go on tour? Is every night different?
Yes. I never do the same.
How do you
lecture
decide
twice.
what to talk about?
Well, at the moment, sometimes I'm taking questions from the audience, and so I just do a Q&A, but I don't look at the questions before I go on stage. And I ask my wife, who asked me the questions, not to show them to me. And then if I prepare a lecture, I usually have a question in mind, often that relates to one of the topics in my books, but sometimes something I'm thinking about, and then I use the lecture as an opportunity to explore that question and answer it while I'm watching the audience to see if my words are landing. And so it's an opportunity to think on my feet. And I think part of the reason the lectures are well attended is because it's a high wire act in some sense. Because I never know when I go on stage whether I'm going to bring the lecture to something like a punchline, to something like a conclusion. So, and I have no idea, because I'll have a variety of ideas up in the air.
See, that's extraordinary. You have no idea where it may lead to.
No. No. It's an
Is
exploration.
that not scary? I mean,
yes. But, you know, there's an idea that the truth will set you free, right? And that's a very strange idea, because you could imagine that I could come here and I could decide there are things I want to do to promote my books, let's say, and I could tilt our conversation towards that, or I could just say, well, I'm going to pay attention to what's going on here, and I'm going to see what happens, and I'm going to say what I think, and then I'm going to assume that whatever the outcome is the right outcome, because it was based on something approximating the truth.
Ultimately, what is your goal? What is the point of Dr. Jordan Peterson? What do you hope to achieve through what is now huge global fame?
I hope to encourage people. Other than that, I want to see what happens. You know, I want to say what I believe to be true as clearly and carefully as I possibly can, and I want to see what happens as a consequence. And what people don't understand about that, in some sense, is your happiness. The purpose of your life is not going to be happiness. Sometimes it is. Sometimes that will come, But there will be difficult periods in your life, and happiness won't suffice then. But what you can have in your life is an adventure. You can have an adventure. And the truth is the best adventure. There's no doubt about that. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, you don't know what's going to happen if you say what you think. Now, I don't mean incautiously, and I don't mean provocatively or any more than necessary. You don't know what's going to happen. So that's very adventurous. But also, if it's you and your voice, then it's your adventure. And if it isn't, like if you're crafting your speech or manipulating in any way, or parroting or abiding by the dictates of the crowd, then I don't know whose adventure you're having, but it's not yours.
See, I'm on this show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, because ironically I got censored. I was doing a morning show at another network.
What, right, in conversation law?
And after the Meghan Markle Prince Harry interview on Oprah Winfrey, I said I didn't believe a word that she was saying, Meghan Markle. And I was told I had to apologise for this. And I said, well, why would I apologise for an honestly held opinion?
There's a question.
I didn't believe it. But I was told, either you apologise or you lose your job.
Yeah.
So I took the losing the job option rather than compromise my free speech idea.
Was that a good idea?
Yes, I think so. Well, because ultimately I think you've got to be true to yourself.
Well, or you're true to something else.
Well, I think we're in a weird world, actually driven by people like Meghan Markle, where she talks about my truth. I don't understand what my truth means.
It means do what I want.
Right, but my truth doesn't actually exist.
Oh, no, because then that would just give me a 5-second lag.
Fact-based
and
unarguable. And then there is opinion around fact and truth. You can't have your own version of the truth, it seems.
Well, you have, it's complicated because when people say that, they are referring to the degree that they're referring to anything, that there are some experiences that are in some ways purely subjective, and they're also valid in their subjectivity. So, for example, if you're sitting there and you say, I'm in pain, and it's assuming I believe you're not manipulating me, I don't have access to that pain, but it's reasonable for me to assume that that's a genuine experience on your part and act accordingly. And so there is a realm where experience is valid that's subjective, but that doesn't mean that everything that happens to you subjectively is now to be regarded by fiat as the truth I have to abide by.
And shouldn't we, in a democracy, should it not be my right to listen to you with great respect and then say, I don't believe a word of what you just said?
Well, it's also your responsibility. It's not just your right. And it's also one of the things people don't understand is that that ability of the other person to oppose or rein in or satirize or dance with or joke or play with, all of those things, they're also what keeps you together and sane, because we all have a tendency to drift in our weakest place, let's say.
But no, he's very good in what he says, like he's literally just said as though
and so on. We all have our temptations. And
don't lie.
One of the ways we buttress ourselves
agree with them to some extent, but disagree if you have something to say and
there you're not funny.
back it up with
you're
evidence
boring. There
of your own opinion.
You need to be reined in.
If you don't like my own opinion, then you don't have to listen, sort of thing.
Celebrities and dictators.
It's right. So it's not up to him to do anything about it.
And then
see what happens.
Then they're in hell. And sometimes they drag everyone along with them, too. So, yeah, really.
On free
He's
speech,
probably got majors in everything.
It seems to me, in my 57 years of being on
he's
this
well
planet,
educated, but I'll also say it is a lot of common sense. Just seeing reality as it is, rather than what you're led to believe.
Democracies.
I
never thought
it's the people that are it's the sheeple that he's appealing to now.
Oh yes,
because they're like, whoa, mate, yeah, that makes sense. Like it's the face, it's the fact that like just there, he's just like his face doesn't change. He says it to you. And if you don't like that, then
people underestimate the
he's
significance
tried.
of this because
you know what I mean?
it isn't.
Yeah.
We're not having a fight about who has the right to speak.
He is a psychologist.
That's
he's
nothing. That's
very well specialised in it. But I think he's seeing more than just the human brain now.
We're having a fight about whether or not
collective consciousness on this planet
free speech exists
how it's not
is nothing but a masquerade for your willingness to dominate and use power. And so if I was taking that tactic,
like having him on the news to talk about the news was just good. They just shot themselves in the foot, didn't they, really?
You're British and you're privileged.
Oh no, I don't
think
so.
You have this theory about free
because
speech that your ancestors derived, but the
well,
only
it was the
reason
news company trying to be like,
so
oh no, you're wrong. This is the way the news is presented, and this is how it goes. And then, like you said, he put her in her place, but it's not in her place. That's her job. if you know what I mean.
cynical
To
criticism
sit there and try and
of
get him to bite.
the
and do
notion of free
things and
speech,
stuff.
then you can't speak because I don't agree
Yeah,
with
I mean,
it.
it's
just
a
see it
form of
as like the
fascism, isn't it?
transparency.
I mean, these
you can
people
see
worse than
everything.
that,
the kind of the ultra woke brigade out there. They categorize themselves
just
as liberals.
timely, I think.
But there's nothing
Him and
liberal
Russell
about
Brand
that
would be a good
mentality.
conversation.
When you have a cancelled culture,
I've
which is
seen
driven
quite
by
a
if you don't agree with
few,
what I say, you're going to get
videos
shamed,
of him
vilified,
doing different
cancelled,
lectures
fired,
of different
maybe even in
things.
prison.
And
That is
of course, there's
actually
nothing that I
what
can put my
fascist
finger on
regimes
now,
do to
except
people,
for
to their population.
Yeah, but the fascists are more
more
straightforward
of
about it.
the
Because they basically come out
way
and say
he
something like,
speaks.
shut up or we'll beat
It's
you. Whereas the compassionate types,
it's not
who are
overpowering,
narcissistic
but it's
compassionate types, they come out and say,
it
well,
feels
we're really trying to
commanding.
save
Do you
the
know
world,
what I mean?
and
He's
we're-
always
we're acting in the world's
telling
best
you.
interest, and we think it would be better if you should just regulate what you say. Because if you
How it
don't,
is.
you're not a good
How
person.
can I put it?
And so that's it's much more.
No, it's not that.
I
You know,
take
like the way that we
fascist
use our
bully
hands
over
to express
the
ourselves and
over the compassionate
try
narcissist anytime.
to
They're way more straightforward.
not make you feel dumb when explaining things because it
Yeah, we
doesn't
should be
take
taken to
anything, you know what I mean?
Invariably is
Don't
used
mansplain to me.
by
What's
people
mansplaining? It means
I've ever
mansplaining. Oh,
encountered.
right. Well,
In other
just
words, people
mansplain
that
that.
love to
Yeah,
be
well, I can't help it.
utterly vicious.
Yeah, well, kind
And
of
yet they
stream
hide
splaining
behind
now.
this fake persona of hashtag be kind.
Well, kindness is tricky, you know,
Yeah, I
because
forgot.
one of the things you deal
it
with
kind of
very
feels aggressive
commonly if
when
you're
he
a
comes
clinical
putting it
psychologist,
across. It's not
apart
like
from
it's like
depression and
he's
anxiety,
educating you as a
well,
child because
behavior therapists offer
he
assertiveness
doesn't
training,
want to
and now
confuse
the
you
people who need
with
assertiveness
something that
training
he
are
could
all
easily
often
say in a
people who
different
are
way.
too agreeable,
Sometimes.
compassionate, polite
That
by
is
temperament.
realising
now the
who you're
problem with
talking
that
to.
is that
Yeah,
they let every
yeah.
other,
'Cause that,
they
like,
let people walk all over them.
I'd
because
say I'm
they don't-
well-spoken,
They don't stand up enough for
but
themselves.
there's no point
and
using
the
that
consequence of that
language
is they get
unless you're
resentful,
with
and then they
those
get
type of
bitter,
people,
and then
if
they
you know what I
get
mean. There's-
conniving, and then they get, and
If
then
you're
they'll
gonna use
mob.
language that people don't
And
know,
so,
then
because they're not,
you're going to spend more time
they'll do anything
explaining.
for everyone else.
But that's it.
But
Like, common language is a bit
they
more
push
easy to
themselves beyond
understand.
their limits, and, and then they won't even
CBA,
recognize the
But
limits.
at the same
because they feel,
time,
well, if I'm not doing
yeah,
everything
if you're
for you,
talking about
then-
engineering
then I'm not a good
Formula
person.
1
It's like,
engine,
no,
yeah,
a
you
good
can't,
person
you can't be speaking
does
like
a little
that.
for you.
that's
Like if
right.
I'm acting
It got
properly
on.
with you,
Yeah,
say in this
all right.
conversation,
What, was it
there's
coming?
something in it for you,
Yeah,
and there's something in it for
exactly.
me,
It made a
right?
meow
And we want that to be reciprocal, and so the cost of me
Yeah, I hear kind of a
bending too
clicking
far in your
noise.
direction is that I'll
Is
be
that you
bitter
clicking
and
your finger?
resentful and conniving.
It sounds like
And-
this.
and
So, but is that you
resentment
clicking your
an
fingers?
unbelievably toxic
Oh,
state of being.
Take a short break. I want to come back and talk to you about
So I found one
a
of my black
random
spots
collection
that
of
I've got
people.
to go
Cristiano
through.
Ronaldo, the most famous
So
footballer
much shit on
on the
it,
planet, the
but I'm gonna
greatest
go
in my
through it.
opinion.
Right, I'm going to end that stream. I think I'll grab my smoke.
Yeah, nice.